Here are some of the photos of the job. As you can see, this particular house, it's a two-story house, and obviously the second story is built up in that attic, and so we've got to break apart all the parts of that attic and make sure that they are all represented in the audit. This house was kind of cut up. As you can see from the side, they came in and added some stairs at some point during a renovation, kind of just tacked them onto the outside edge of the house. So we've got all of those pieces, and we have some floor, what's that, the term for that, where it's there's, I can't remember, I'll hit it in a minute. I can't remember what it's called, but exposed floor. Thank you. And then you can see there's kind of a cluster of addition stuff going on in the back of the house. Here's some more of that second story stuff. But this one was just really cut up, and it was kind of interesting to dissect and make sure that I got it all into the audit. This is what I did. I do not recommend that you do this yourselves, because this would take you way too much time, but I did it so that I could share it with you guys. So here's a drawing of the house. Let me just kind of scroll around real quick. You can see there's that stair addition. Here's kind of all of the weird stuff that was happening on the back of the house. So we have this main floor, and then we have our second floor attic, right? Well, the goal on this is that we have to make sure that the entire thermal boundary is represented. And so we need to first clearly understand where the thermal boundary is. So I've broken this house apart into all of its components, which is represented here. So we've got our main floor walls and second floor walls. I think when I ran the audit, since this main floor wall and this second floor wall was built out of the same materials, I think I entered those in as one wall in a number of areas. But then when you get up into that attic, you've got all the different pieces where you've got your collar beam, you've got your roof rafter, you have the knee walls there in purple, and then the outer ceiling joist. Thank you. I was going to forget what that was called. All of those pieces have to be represented. And it's extremely difficult when you're inside the house to make sure that you are not forgetting a piece. Like when you start walking around and adding up all of the knee wall and stuff, it's kind of a mess. Also, if you'll notice, so here's the back of the house, and I've got a portion of this back wall shown in purple, which is knee wall, and I have a portion of that back wall shown in yellow, which is just wall, because the roof line came in right there. And so in reality, they had portions of that wall that kind of are knee wall and portions that are outside wall. And it's important that you understand where some of those things begin and end. Now, if they're small portions, it's probably easier to just enter them as an exterior wall. But when you guys come up for the auditor training, Dalton and I have been working on some stuff, and we hope to spend some time on this, but we will expect that you guys can identify where that portion of a knee wall begins and ends, or that portion of an attic space begins and ends, so that you can be very accurate on your audit. And then the other thing that I had was on this house, so I've got this second story or this finished attic, but I also have over the back half, the addition had this space here that was just a regular unfinished attic. So in my audit, let me open up the audit on it. In the audit, I had one unfinished attic, and so I entered that in, and I had 196 square feet, so it was just rock wool, and it didn't have much there at all. And then when you're evaluating for it, so I just selected to blow in fiberglass on this one, and then what happens if I leave all of these blank? Anybody out there know?
The depth itself.
yeah, it'll select itself the depth, right? Wherever possible, we want to do that. We want to let the audit determine that kind of stuff. But if we're limited, then we can put in some information and you know, force it to only allow us to put 5 inches in or whatever we might run into. So that was the unfinished portion. The finished attic. So I had all 4 pieces. We had some outer ceiling joist, collar beam, knee wall, and roof rafter. It's important to note that the orientation is not a factor here. Like when we're doing our walls, orientation is a factor, but when it comes to the attic, it's not. So we really just need to add up the surface area of all the knee wall. So I just need to know how much surface area all that purple stuff is and add it all up. Does anybody have any good methods for this? Like, have you guys found any tricks or anything when you're walking through a house to help you to make sure that you're adding up all the right surfaces? You just got to think straight, or you guys do anything special to do this?
You just got to pay attention if it's a knee wall or not, or if it's an outside wall.
Yeah, that's because I'm looking for if anybody does come across anything. We started in the training house. We just stuck some sticky notes on the walls for a minute to make sure we counted all of them. But I haven't really come up with anything better than that so far. But in my little drawing, it's simple because I can just select all the surface areas of the knee wall and it just adds them up for me. But that's not reality. Reality is I need to go in and I need to get a length and a height on every single one of them and add them all up. So, but basically, I just went through and did all that. So on the collar beam stuff, all of the collar beam totaled up to 386 square feet. We had about 5.5 inches of fiberglass bats, and I had selected on this one to just go ahead with the fiberglass bats. It really depends on what your agency's doing, and evaluated it as such. On the knee wall, I ended up with 217 square feet. And on that one, all of the knee wall already had, basically had at least R13 fiberglass bats on it. And so when I was evaluating, I selected none. And I really should have just made some sort of a comment here, because anytime you're not letting the audit evaluate to do anything, you need to make a comment. But this is one of those times when the fiberglass bats are already there, so it's not necessary to evaluate for it. The other option is that you evaluate for additional fiberglass bats, and when you run the audit will tell you not to do anything. And so either way, you've got documentation as to why you did not do anything on your knee walls. But in this particular case, all of the knee walls were insulated. So the outer ceiling joist, this is where you could see some variations, because even though you're we're talking about the same house, the blue stuff is the outer ceiling joist, so you might get over in this section and it could have nothing, and this other section could have something, and this could have lots of something, and so it can be a mess. If you ever needed to, you could break up the outer ceiling joist into multiple attics if you needed to add insulation in just one section or another. Or if it's similar construction, you can average it. So if you found like 10 inches over here and maybe 2 or 3 inches over here, you could just say that the average was like 4 or 5 inches, and kind of estimate your total square footage to make sure that your audit's going to give you the right bag count to add more insulation there. If you ever needed to, on the outer ceiling column, you could also just, if you had to break that up, say these two there was plenty of insulation in the front half of this house, but back here we just needed some more. You could even put that one in as an unfinished attic, because that's essentially what it is. I prefer to see it in as an outer ceiling joist. If you're working with a finished attic, the first place I'm going to go to look is to see, was there outer ceiling joist did they put it on the audit, under the outer ceiling joist. But if instead of creating a whole nother finished attic, if you wanted to put it in as an unfinished attic, that would be fine, just because the audit's going to look at them both the same way. In fact, I think if it was the roof rafter. That was the thing I thought was interesting. Oh, it just didn't mark it as attic floor type, so never mind. Ignore what I was just saying there about the roof rafter. Anyway, and then on to I think the roof rafter part is next. So the roof rafter, that's just that section, the green stuff. So that's all the slope. Now, when I am going out to your jobs, I want to start seeing that you guys are verifying the actual insulation depth on some of these cavities and stuff. And so make sure that you're either finding somewhere, back inside the attic where you can actually look up and verify that, or if you cannot find a spot, make sure you're drilling a hole somewhere. If you need to, drill a big hole so that you can verify and that you know what's actually in there. And on this house, as complex as it was, you could have multiple different types of insulation in here. Because really, it looked to me like this back section of this house was kind of an addition after they built the front half. And so you could have very well had some blown-in fiberglass up front and some bats back here or nothing back here. Mm-hmm. So you really need to make sure that you think about how the house was constructed and verify in enough locations that what the actual insulation type is in there. So looking at this house, does anybody have any ideas on what areas you would want to check on to make sure you're checking all the roof rafters, and why you'd want to check those multiple locations? Nobody wants to venture a guess? What about this back half, or this back section where they added the stairs on? There's a very good chance that whatever they did to build this, the construction was probably not the same as when they built this.
Is that a heated area?
It is a heated area, yeah. All of these colors represent my thermal boundary. So yes, that's all inside the envelope. So you definitely want to look at that ceiling, and verify that the insulation there is similar to the insulation over here. But I think that's something that I haven't done a very good job on, and so I will start looking for it. I hope that you guys are doing a good job on it, but I will be looking for it, because it dawned on me one day. I was like, wow, I can't just go into this attic and drill one hole and assume that the whole house is the same. You really got to think about, how was this house put together? It's obvious that this was an old brick home, and then they added this on. This has wood siding, and then they added some more stuff on the back, which is all stucco. So,
hey Matt, I have a question.
Yeah.
I can be what you can consider a noob to attics. So, I'm seeing that you have on your audit 4 finished attics and 1 unfinished attics. Now, from what I'm seeing, what you're saying, like the blue areas where you need to put insulation and the knee walls. Now, I would think that those are the unfinished attics, and that one little area is the finished attic.
Which one little area, sorry, is the finished attic?
Like, I would say, to me, I would think like the blue area that you have on there, and maybe the green area, and the knee wall, those would be the unfinished attics, right, where you put the insulation in?
Okay, so I'm going to have to swing this around and look at it from the front again. So here's the front of it. Now, if you'll look at the roof line and stuff, now I'm going to peel that off, and you'll see that, so like this red area, that is called the collar beam. So that has attic space sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
Also, the green areas, those are all roof rafter attic sections. So they're probably built out of 2x4 or 2x6 or 2x10, but that is attic space. We need to insulate in there. And then the purple section, those are our knee walls. So the back of those need to be insulated. And then that blue section, is essentially attic space as well. Now,
Yeah, but isn't that unfinished attics?
Well, so finished attic is when the trusses have the ability to have rooms built into them. And your unfinished attic would be your typical unfloored attic that you typically find in a Rambler or something. So your second story attic with second story that has rafters and the collar beams, that's basically where they have gone in and built walls into an attic, or they have bonus room trusses put up there.
Okay.
yes,
That answers my question then.
this back section here, where it's really just has like roof right on top of it. There's no rooms built into those trusses or into that space. Those are really unfinished attic space, and that's why, like this section right here, that could really, if you wanted to, you could put that on your audit as unfinished attic.
Okay.
Because
what I was thinking is that it's literal, like finished attic. So now I'm understanding.
Okay, and thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you get into these how complex they can actually be, and don't be afraid. So if I had multiple, and you just pointed out something that, so this shows that I have one unfinished attic and I have 4 finished attics, and the components of those 4 finished attics are, I have one that's collar beam, one that's knee wall, one that's outer ceiling, and one that's roof rafter, right? Well, if I had multiple roof rafters, then I can just add a new one and say, okay, this one's another roof rafter, and this was the section over the stairs, so I had about 4 times 20, about 100 square feet of that section, and I drilled a hole in there and I found that there was no insulation, and I'd like to blow in some fiberglass while I'm there, and then I'd have to give it an attic coat. But anyway, so you can add in as many of those pieces as you want. When it comes to that outer ceiling, like I was saying before, if I'm not seeing them in the finished attic section, I'll just go look in your unfinished attics just to make sure.
Okay.
Like when I'm looking at them, I just want to make sure all of these spaces are represented. Like, our goal is to make sure that we identify all of the surface area of the thermal boundary, and that we evaluate to complete the thermal boundary. So if you get into a house and you realize, okay, there's, say this section had no insulation in it, so we found a part of the surface area of the thermal boundary that doesn't have, it's incomplete, so we want to evaluate to complete that section. And then I don't know if anybody's noticing this, but I actually am missing a portion of the thermal boundary here. Anybody see it?
Yeah.
Where's it at, bro?
Where the stairs. Right here.
That it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on my little drawing there, you can see there's a hole in it. So I'm actually missing something there that I didn't account for. And it's quite simple to do. Now, I would assume if I had gone inside this house and measured, I would be measuring the drywall, it would probably be a little more obvious to me, and I would hope that I would have added that in there. And if I was off a little bit, I mean, that means I forgot about, 10 square feet of insulation. So hopefully that wouldn't be the difference between whether I could have or could not have insulated that. But anyway, it's important to make sure you're adding up all those pieces. The collar beam area, this red area, this is one where you really could, if you wanted to, you could break that apart and say that, you know, this front piece is a collar beam, but this is an unfinished attic. Some of those things, just whatever works for you guys when you're auditing them. But if these are similar or the same types of insulation, the same depths or similar depths, you know, it might just be easier to put all that in as one piece and audit it that way. So that's really all I wanted to cover on that. Does anybody have any questions? Do you guys want more information on this or anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Cool.